I'm going to go ahead and click. Yeah. So I put together my adventures on the Jurassic Coast. So my dates were June 20th through the 4th of July, which was summer, early summer there. And it turned out to be perfect weather. Now, usually it's rainy, but this year it has been very beautiful, and now it's raining. So I talked to people there today, and it's been raining there for the last few weeks. So they're not very happy about it. I visited different places. What I did was I put a map together here for you. Over on the right-hand side, you can see England. I started in London, which is in the bottom right-hand corner. Went to an area called Castleton, which is in the Peak District. Went from the Peak District up to an area called Whitby, which is on the Yorkshire coast. Went down here to the west side, southwest of Bristol, and went to a Cretaceous coast and collected there. And then went south to Lyme Regis, which is the home of Mary Anning, who is my paleontology hero. And then ended my trip back in London at the Natural History Museum, which is awesome. So I've got pictures from all of those things and a few videos too. So first of all, just a little bit about geology of the coasts. This is Whitby, which is the Yorkshire area where I start, or where I was, and Lyme Regis is down here. Most of the blue and green areas are going to be Jurassic. You will see pictures today from 3 different areas: Kimmeridgian, Callovian, and the Toarcian. So it's all very, very old, but mostly Jurassic. There is going to be a little bit of Cretaceous in there too. Yeah.
Let me just share the people online. This camera, hopefully you guys online can hear. If you want to set up yours so you have the speaker view on that, then I have the camera set up pointing towards the screen and Tara. And then Tara, when you're talking, knowing that they see that way.
Okay, be on the other side.
Here.
Okay.
If you stand this way and
all right,
this way, then they can see.
I'll try that.
Yeah, just
okay.
Carry on.
Thank you. All right, so after I got the family on the road on their flights, I rented a car. Now, this is the second car that I rented in London. The first one took us to Port Isaac, where Doc Martin was filmed, and that was a huge minivan, and it was really hard to drive. It was stick shift. I almost hit so many cars. My cousin was driving a different car, and she actually did get in a wreck. So I said, I will pay any amount of money, which was probably a very bad idea. I said I would pay any amount of money to get an automatic. So I have a Lexus, which was very nice. And that's the car I drove all over the place. So my first day, I drove from London to Castleton, which was about a 4-hour drive. And they say the 4-hour drives in England, it's not worth it if you're not staying for 4 or 5 days. So people in England do not drive very far. And no one had been to Castleton except me. Now, Castleton is an interesting area. It's got interesting geology. And there's caves all over. It's mostly limestone, and then there's caves throughout. This is a trail I walked. There's sheep along the whole hillsides, and I saw little crinoids and other little bivalves as I walked on the trail. It wasn't that exciting, but I did go up through a couple caverns. So they've got these beautiful caverns that are limestone inside. They've been used for lead mining, but then also there's a stone called Blue John, which is very specific gemstone to that area, supposedly. And so I brought a necklace in that you guys can look at. Blue John is actually blue and purple to black, and it's found supposedly only in the cavern that's there. I can't spend too much time on every slide because I have so many. So then I went from Castleton up to the Whitby area, and Whitby is so cool. Whitby, these are whale ribs, and then looking at the town of Whitby, which is a port town. It used to be fishing, and there's this town, and it's got cute little shops and homes around this where the river comes through. And then up on the hill are the remains of an old abbey, and the abbey is from 600. And I'm going to talk about more of that in a second. But this is the view near my hotel. So we're up near Whitby, which is in the area of Yorkshire. Now the Whitby area is known for the Whitby Abbey, which is the inspiration for Bram Stoker's Dracula. So if you watch any of the old movies that are actually filmed, they're filmed there in Whitby. And it is, I didn't find it that creepy, actually. I thought it was beautiful. But the Abbey is up there, the fallen down stuff. Saint Hilda was the founder, a female abbess of the Abbey, and she was born sometime around 614 to 680. And she was extremely instrumental in that area. And she was thought to have thrown all the snakes off the cliffs of the Whitby Abbey. And when they fell on the ground on the coast, they turned to stone. And that's why when you found ammonites, they thought the ammonites were snakes frozen in time, because Hilda got rid of all the snakes in the area. This is in the Abbey Museum, and it's a beautifully prepared ammonite. And then the head of it has been carved, the matrix has been carved into the head of a snake. And this was a big thing, and people sold these a lot in the 1800s. So, and you can still buy them now. It's about $65 to buy one, which I thought was exorbitant, so I didn't get one. So that there are 3 different genuses or genre or whatever genus is genre. Yeah, but there's 3 different kinds of ammonites. And one of them are the Hildaceras, which are named after Hilda. So the Hildaceras or the Hildies are one of the types of ammonites that you can find there. Named after her, the abbess. Yes. The geology of the Whitby area and Yorkshire coast is Jurassic. And the fossils that we find there are ammonites and nodules, which I have plenty of as examples. An ammonite looks like this. It's related to squid and octopus, and belemnites are also very common to find there as fossils. And they're a straight cone, like an ice cream cone with a squid head outside too. There's also lots of ichthyosaurs that have been found in that area, and ichthyosaurs look like giant dolphins, but they're actually a marine reptile. So there's plenty of those around. And again, like I said, if you find an ichthyosaur or a plesiosaur, you are welcome to take it home. You don't have to report it anywhere. You don't have to do anything. They ask you nicely to please say that you found this to the nearby museums. But if you find it on a public beach, it's yours to take home. So this is a belemnite, and then the rest of his body's been drawn on there in the center picture. And then on the right-hand side is one of the nodules with an ammonite. So another thing that's really important about this area and all of England is that the coast is very susceptible to landslides. And this is a landslide picture over here that happened last week. So early last week, a whole hillside fell down. This is about 200 feet in the air, and it just slammed down all the way along the coast. So it's really important to go at low tide, to go when it's safer. After the landslide, though, is a perfect time to find those ichthyosaur bones and to find those bigger bones that are sticking out. So people take this really seriously. When I went to Lyme Regis, the tide was too high, and I could not find a guide to take me out to look for rocks, to look for fossils, because we were going to be too close to the cliffs. And so they take it very seriously, because one landslide means that there's going to be another. The landslides generally do not happen in the summer. This one was a weird one. Usually they happen in the wintertime. When I was out on the coast, we heard shale falling the whole entire time I was out for 3 hours. You'd hear little bits and crackles of the rock coming down. So it's taken very seriously. Last week, actually, at the beach I was at, there was a man who was trapped. His leg was crushed completely by a landslide, and they couldn't get him up the cliff without putting him into a helicopter. So a rescue helicopter had to come and help take him out. Unique to the Whitby area is a rock called jet. And it's actually fossilized monkey puzzle tree. So I'm hoping Robert is watching this or will watch it sometime. I'm wearing a necklace of it. It's very light as a stone, almost like coal, but it's much harder. It's approximately 180 million years old. And if you walk down so it's this one is wonderful because it's got a fossil in it, this big chunk of jet. The way you get the jet is that you go to these awful, precarious cliffs. And people, I'm thinking idiots in my head, but I don't want to say it out loud, are digging pits. This is a hand that's pointing to it. This pit is about the same size as a person, and they are digging into these cliffs of shale to get the jet, and they're collapsing on them. But the jet is collected, taken to jewelers, and there were 6 different jewelry stores in Whitby that were selling just jet jewelry. And so I had to buy some, even though I was supporting that.
Well, it's not like we've never dug into it.
Right, yes. It does look a lot like it, right? Where we do the salmon. So I wanted to take a tour. So I hired this man whose name is Mark Kemp, and he is called the Yorkshire Fossil Hunter. He has a website, he has a YouTube channel. And here he is, and he has received, we sent some rocks to him. Greg Gentry gave me some small concretions, and I took the concretions to Mark. And this, Greg also gave us instructions on how to clean them up and prepare them. Greg is an awesome preparator, in addition to hunting and taking tours out and giving classes and things. So he's got this career, he's made a career out of doing something he loves, and he's done really well. So I met him, and then we walked for about a half a mile out to a beach called Sands End, which is north of the Whitby area. And this is the haul that I came back with. It is most of everything that's on the table. It's Lower Jurassic, Toarcian period, which I don't know the periods very well, but it's Toarcian. It's 174 to 182 million years old. And I got mostly Dax, is what they call them. Dax or Dactyloceras, which is the type of ammonite that I found. So I've been preparing those badly. I've got a couple of them that I prepared. They are all pyritized, which is really cool. So they're covered with false gold. So as you clean them up, they get really cool. I've got those from there, all kinds of ammonite pieces. And I collected belemnites from there, not very good ones, and a couple clams or some type of bivalve, and maybe Aaron can tell me what they are. So the belemnites are down in the lower right-hand corner, and then the rest are all basically ammonites and gorgeous. So I want to tell you about that trip because it was really fun. But it looks like we're frozen maybe, Aaron. Oh, there goes.
Oh, it's because of your video. It's taking a second to load.
Yeah. I don't have a mouse though. Is this the mouse? I don't see it. Okay, so I have some videos, but I don't know how to work that thing. So this is north of Whitby. This is about 10-15 minutes drive north of Whitby, and then a half a mile walk. And then we had to walk down the cliffs. So everywhere I went, it was cliffs and you had to walk down. So this one had stairs. So he thought it was really nice because it had stairs. Otherwise, you have to kind of climb down with ropes. If you hold it down to the bottom, it should click on, but it's okay.
Is there a play there? Go back up.
No.
It was right there.
There, yep, there.
Okay, hang on. It's not on a computer.
So it's okay. Let's not do it because it'll take time.
No, that's.
No.
it's not-
Okay.
Is there a play? That's
don't
just
see-
advanced screen.
Yeah.
Is there a play?
Nope. So it's okay. Yeah,
Sorry,
that's okay.
I don't know why.
Okay, so that was just a view so you could see where we were. The cliffs are gorgeous. It reminds me so much of Oregon, except that the cliffs are much higher than what we've got in Oregon, but it's the same feel to be out there, and the rocks on the ground are the same that we're walking over. This this was a video. And what I wanted to show you was that this is a landslide. And this landslide is about 12 feet tall. And Mark walked up to the edge of it and he was looking for nodules that had been knocked loose. This was probably 6 months old though. And so probably most people had already grabbed the good nodules, but the nodules, remember, had the ammonites in them. So we stood on the edge. We were prepared to run away. We talked about how we would run away if something happened, but you could hear gravel coming down the whole time. I had a few videos, so just waiting.
We can go back and get in.
Okay, I do have these on YouTube, so you can watch the videos. This was the types of rocks we were climbing over. And we climbed for about 1.5 miles one way and then came back 1.5 miles as the tide went out. And Mark was leading. You can see that he's carrying a hammer. He stops and knocks nodules open about every 2 minutes. So he's picking nodules up, banging them. If it's a good one, it's good. And the rest, most of them, he throws into the ocean. Oh, this one now, that works.
I don't know.
Okay, so this we had to climb over this, which was a little slippery. And then this one's also a video of, there's an ammonite piece here, and this was an ammonite. So this was the type of stuff we were looking through to find pieces. So we'll see, yeah, there. Just had to give it a second to load up. So you can see, you're just picking up and looking for clues. And then this is a fragment. So I ended up with a bunch of those, and Jerry calls those pocket fossils because they're not in great shape, but they're pretty cool still. You can see in this picture, the picture on the right was a picture before I prepped it, and the picture on the left, and then the picture on the right is after I prepped it. You can see the silk, that golden color. The pyritization is really, really neat. But I think I'm going to have to get a finer tool or the thank you. I keep forgetting air abrasion to get the extra off, but it's really neat to get the center of these and expose them and make them beautiful. So these are probably dacks, again, the Dactyloceras. So that's what I'll be doing this winter, is working on those. Okay, so from there, we did that all day. And then the next day I went to Caton Bay. So Whitby is up there in the top, and then Caton Bay is down here. It took about an hour to get here. This is Scarborough, the famous Scarborough Fair, right? So this is a little bit farther south. It's a totally different type of beach. So it is Jurassic, but it's also glacier. So there's a lot of glaciated mud. And so there's little rocks from every time period that are all mixed together. But the cool thing about this one, it's Middle Jurassic, so it's a little bit older than the last place. But the really neat thing about this was that I ended up meeting a group of gals and a guy, Yorkshire fossil huntresses. So before I went, I got on Facebook and I found people that were collecting fossils, and it's a huge hobby there. And there was a group this is Mark, the guy that gave me the tour. He is he's been accepted as a huntress, and he leads the group. And then these are some of the ladies that I met. There were about 12 of us. And we all met at this beach, and they're a bunch of weirdos just like me. Some brought their kids, and we went out together and looked for fossils. Lousy fossils, not very good fossils there, mostly because everything was covered with sand. So yes, this was the leader of the group, and there's Mark. But the leader of the group was very excited. I brought her one of our clam burgers from the coast, and she was afraid she was going to mess it up. And so she made Mark knock it open with his hammer. And she was also, she didn't believe me that I could guarantee that there was a clam inside. And I said, I know my rocks. You know your rocks, but I know mine. So when we opened it, she was so thrilled. And then she sent a picture of it up. they put it up she put it up with all her other fossils, her ammonite fossils. She said it's one of the most beautiful fossils she's ever seen. So I was happy to give her that one and told her what it was, so she knew what it was. Okay, so this is the area that we went to on Caton Bay. And it's a video too, so it might come up or might not, but you can see that it's got much more clay instead of slate, or not slate, but yeah, it's going. So we walked along the edge as the tide went out. We didn't find very much here, mostly because the sand was covering things. I got toenails mostly here. So graphia. So found a few of those, and those are also covered with pyrite. So that's pretty cool. Okay, from the Whitby area, a long drive to southwest. Somerset is the county that I went to, and I went to two different places here. I went to a place called Stagursey and another place called Lilstock. These are totally out of the way. No one goes there because they're on a really, really bad road. And Alexis, it probably shouldn't have been on that road. Stagursey is a tiny little village. This is the Stagursey Castle. You can rent it to stay here. The rest of the castle remains are here. There's an actual moat that's still there and still working because there's a little river or creek that kind of runs through it. But there's a little church in the town called St. Andrew's Church here that's been around since 1100. And what's cool inside here is that along with the crypts, there is an ichthyosaur on the ground. And I love that juxtaposition. I love that there is an ichthyosaur fossil in the Catholic Church. That just tickles me. And so it was actually rescued from a public house, which is the pub, in Shorton, which is a village nearby, and then brought here after the pub went away. So I stopped there just to say hello to the ichthyosaur, and then went to Lilstock Beach. Now, Lilstock Beach, it was a terrible time for me to go. It's old. All I got was one rock. The reason why it was such a bad time to go was because it was very high tide. And so most everything was covered. I only found one rock with fossils, and that was this cute little crinoid fossil. So it was really fun just to go and to be there, to be outside. I got to go to every beach there was, and I loved it. So it was about an hour and a half to 2 hour drive from there down to Lyme Regis. So I was here, drove down to Lyme Regis. Now, Lyme Regis is a place I've heard about for a long time because Mary Anning is, as I said, one of my heroes. Mary Anning is the person that she sold seashells by the seashore. That rhyme is about Mary Anning. She was one of the first paleontologists, but she wasn't ever accepted as a paleontologist because she was a woman. But she lived around the time when everybody was trying to decide what fossils were. And it was before evolution came as an idea, but they were trying to decide. The biggest thing was the theologians said that we couldn't have extinction, because God wouldn't make something that wasn't going to be able to last forever. So, but she was finding these things that were not on the earth anymore. And she was selling them to wealthy people. She was very poor and grew up very poor. She never made a lot of money. She wanted to join the Geological Society and wrote letters back and forth to all of the geologists at the time, but she was a woman and she wasn't allowed to join. So they felt bad about that in about 1915, and way after she was dead, and bought a beautiful stained glass window for the church where she's buried. Anyway, so Lyme Regis is the home of Mary Anning. She lived from 1799 to 1847, so she was only 48 when she died of breast cancer, 47. But the town is a fossil hunter's dream town. So if we would all be so happy there. So their light posts are ammonites. They had, I think there were at least 8 different fossil stores, from very, very amateur up to the Madagascar trilobites and things like that, to ichthyosaurs for sale in the basement of these giant places. So it's a wonderful place. It's on the beach. It's been famous for a really long time as a beach destination. Jane Austen went there. She wrote about it in Persuasion. It's been a destination for a long time. It is part of the Jurassic Coast World Heritage Site, and this is a brochure about it. But all the way from west of here's Lyme Regis, all the way from west Exmouth, all the way through Dorset, over to about Wareham, they have protected this as the Jurassic Coast. So it's a World Heritage Site, which is pretty cool. All that really means is you can't dig into the bedrock and you can't dig into the sides, but so you can still take anything home that you find there. It's 96 miles long. Many of the marine reptiles that have been studied have come from there, and it's a really important place for collection. The Isle of Man is over, I think it's Isle of Man. What's the Isle? There's Isle of Wight. The Isle of Wight is over here, and that's also called the Jurassic Island. So it's kind of included. Mary Anning is, there's this beautiful statue that probably many of you have seen, the ladies in the room have seen, right? And it's this beautiful statue, and it stands looking the direction that she would have looked as she went out to collect fossils. And she had a dog that was really famous that went with her, and it was a gift from one of the men that she sold fossils to and maybe had an affair with, we don't know. But if you look, there's ammonites hidden in the statue. So in the dog's ear, there's an ammonite. She has ammonites on her dress, an ammonite on her basket. So I had to go and take pictures of that. And then this is her gravestone. She was buried beneath her brother because she wasn't married at the time of her death. So she was buried beneath her only living relative, which was her brother. So she was buried first, and then he was on top. So that's next to the church that's there in town. The other thing that's in this town that is a big thing is the Lyme Regis Museum, which is about the history of Lyme Regis, and a whole floor is dedicated to Mary Anning. So it's built on the site of Mary Anning's home where she grew up. The building is a beautiful brick building like this. And then it's just really, it's got some great stuff in it. Ichthyosaur, plesiosaurs. I finally learned the difference between some of those. But this is an ichthyosaur that's at the very top left-hand corner is an ichthyosaur fossil that she prepared, Mary Anning prepared, and is there at this museum. And I thought it was wonderful to be able to see it clearly, to see how she prepared it. She had nothing. She was doing this in 1800, and she had little chisels and screwdrivers and nothing like what we've got now. And it was prepared beautifully. Especially, I'll show you in a little bit, but see these flippers, they have so many bones, and for her to prepare them and make it easy to see was cool. So as I said, when I was there, the tide was too high for me to go out safely with a guide. So I went out at the lowest tide, and the lowest tide was here. So these are people over on the right-hand side. The people are at the right-hand side, and then that's where the water is, and this is where the landslide is. So we could go there safely as long as we stayed, away from the landslides. As long as there was no big landslide, we were fine. And it was out at about 9 o'clock at night as the sun was setting. So I went out, I had to collect where she did, which is an area called Black Ven. The view from there is stunning. And I only found one good rock, which I brought it, but the picture there is on the right. And they're beautiful ammonites. There's probably 20 ammonites in this rock. And I don't know how to fix it. I'm going to put that off to the last, but they're calcified on the inside. So there's white crystals that fill them up. So I want to prep it. So it's beautiful, but I wanted to collect where she did. She would go out every morning or night, whenever the lowest tide was, and collect between Lyme Regis to Charmouth. Charmouth is a little town next door. And they have a museum called the Charmouth Heritage Coast Center. And I walked through there and saw that. And I thought of Greg the whole entire time, because Greg preps so beautifully. And I was looking at, and I've also been with him in Mitchell, where we collect these huge ammonites. Those ammonites are about 3 to 4 feet across and fill a wall. And I was just, oh, it was so beautiful. And they also have the prerequisite ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs. And here what they've got is, Attenborough's sea dragon. So everybody worships Dave Attenborough in England. His quotes are everywhere, his picture. So see, look at all those little bones in the paddles. This one doesn't have a head, but it's famous. Okay, so I'm at Lyme Regis, heading back towards London, and I stop at Kimmeridge Bay. Kimmeridge Bay is so hard to get to. It is, you have to go, so in England, there's A roads, B roads, and C roads, and this should have been a C road. So they're 1 lanes, there's shrubs all along the side. You're driving on the wrong side of the car. They say it's the correct side. You're driving, and cars are coming at you at 60 miles an hour, and you have to stop and pull over or back up. It was very, very difficult to get to this town of Kimmeridge. And then there's this beautiful new building that's there called the Etches Collection. And Etch is the guy's last name. And he is Steve Etches, and he was a plumber by trade and an amateur paleontologist who becomes a professional paleontologist, and he's still alive, but he's been collecting for 40 years, and his preparations are gorgeous. So this building houses his collection and his preparatory studio. I learned so much about ammonites here. I really didn't know anything except that they were squid related, but things clicked with what we've done together as a group. So first of all, I didn't know the difference between males and females. If you prep them correctly, you can see the difference between males and females. Males have horns or lappets, which are little stone things that come out and carry the sperm. And the females don't have that. That's not true for every species, but for a lot of ammonites and the ammonites around here, it is true. Steve Etches was the first person to find eggs, ammonite eggs, which I'll show you in a second in a preparation. But what he also found was, females are larger. They're called macroconchs, and males are smaller. So how do you know if you don't have 2 next to each other, or know what age it is? That's difficult. Ammonite predation, and this is something I found on some of mine, was when you find an ammonite there, that oftentimes they have bite marks right above the opening. And it's almost always at the side. And it's how they're preyed on. And it's usually by other squid. So other squid usually bite it because there's no bite marks. There are the beaks that the squid use. That's what they match. And I have seen that in some of my ammonites that I found. This was interesting because it went along with what we learned from the Mitchell site, which was when we were finding ammonites there, Greg Ritalik said that they were preyed upon by birds and beaks of birds, and he saw the bite marks, and it could be squid. So I just thought that was interesting that we can learn a lot about the predation of them by looking at the shells that we can, if we prep them well.
And the reason they're big right there is that
The juicy part.
living chamber
Yep,
where they're, and so
right
if you
here.
line them there, then the body slides out.
Yep.
Eat the soft.
Another thing that was interesting was that Steve Etches prepped and has shown what he thinks are the first eggs of ammonites. Nobody knew how they reproduced. So he's found clutches of eggs and little strings. And you can read through this at a different time. We don't have a lot of time now, but he found 3 different pieces of evidence that showed that they used eggs to reproduce. And he prepared them beautifully so that we could see that. Well, and that would make sense, right? Octopus eggs, and they're related. Another thing that he found by preparing things carefully was that a lot of times the ammonites, especially the outer whorls of the ammonite shells, would house different critters. So after an ammonite dies, the body's eaten out. It's a hollow tube. So he would find lobster pieces, lobster or whole lobsters inside of these shells, which was really neat to see. The reason why the pictures are so awful is because the lighting in the museum is blue to make it like an ocean. And also, I think, to stop people from taking pictures. So I've had to modify it a little bit. Another thing that happened in Kimmeridge, which was similar to what we have seen, is the bloat and float. So like in Mitchell, they have stegosaurus vertebra or theropod dinosaurs. These are dinosaur bones, and England was covered with water during the time of Jurassic. So we shouldn't see terrestrial organisms there, but they have got bones of these things. And it was proposed that they're bloat and float. So the dinosaurs died on land and their bodies washed out to sea, which is again what that's what Greg has said happened in the area where we found dinosaurs in Mitchell. And then I just saw amazing prep. So this is a picture of an ichthyosaur. I don't know what that is, but if you look on the inside, there's all kinds of little tiny fish vertebra. So you guys can't see it in this picture, but I could see fish vertebra inside the guy's stomach. So you could prep it and see what his last meal was before he got squashed. And this is a jaw, and there's little pieces of marine reptile in the teeth still. And then I took pictures for the crab people, and nobody's here except for Bob, which, you're enough. You are enough. So he also prepped crabs and lobster and shrimp. So just to see, that is gorgeous to see the outside of the shells and to see the detail that he was able to do. This was my favorite museum that required such a long, crazy drive. It blew me away, and it wasn't even that large, but it was just so impressive. Okay, so then now I head back to London, which is a 2.5-hour drive via Darwin's home. I got to go see where Darwin lived, and you can't take any pictures inside Darwin's house, but here's a book if you want to see what was inside. It humanized Darwin for me so much because I teach about Darwin, and a guy named Wallace, who also came up with the same idea of evolution, and it talks more about how what came about, how that the origin of the species came about. It was just really that they were actually friendly with each other. I thought that I'd been taught that they were fighting against each other and trying to get famous for the same idea. And I didn't know Darwin was also sick most of his life, that he probably had Guillain-Barré syndrome from a bite from a fly when he was traveling on the boat. So it was just really, really cool, but I'm not going to talk about that. Okay, Natural History Museum. Finally, I get to go to this. I wanted to see this so badly, and I wasn't sure if I was going to get to fit it in, and I'm so glad I did. So this is the front. It's very Gothic. The building's very Gothic, and this is the very first entryway that you go in, and there's a huge blue whale skeleton, and then Darwin sits at the head of the building. And then you go off to the sides to see all the different cool natural history stuff. I went in 2 different entrances. I was there all day. I was there when they opened, and I was there when they closed, just about an hour before they closed. So they have their special exhibit right now is Titanosaur. So it's a traveling exhibit. Titanosaur is the big one that they found in Argentina. And that is the arm, that is the leg. And then you could go in and see how large he was. It was really cool because you could see how does a big animal like that survive? Because it was huge. They grow really fast. They have a long tail and neck so that they're balanced out correctly. Really fat, sturdy legs, which you can see from the femur, and then really efficient lungs, because that's the biggest thought that people have is how do these things breathe? When an animal gets super, super large, they don't breathe well. So it was just neat to learn about. The Mary Anning room. Oh, So cool. So the Mary Anning room is a long hallway, and one side of the wall is just covered with ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs and everything. And she only prepared some of them. They only know about some of them that she did because she would sell them, and then the person who bought it would take credit for it. So we don't really know who made which things, but this is what it looks like. Just a long hallway. At the end of the hallway, you can see that there's a green flag over here on the right-hand side, and that's the T-Rex restaurant. So I had lunch there at the T-Rex restaurant. It's full of Jurassic Park things. But you can see also how busy it was. It was so busy at every place that I went to, museum-wise in London. It was a crush everywhere. Okay, the dinosaur section was interesting, but by this time I'm kind of getting bored with dinosaurs. I'm really more interested in the people stuff. You doing it right, Aaron? Yeah. Okay. This showed hollow bones, which I thought was really interesting, that the dinosaurs had hollow bones like birds. And it was one of the ways that they could stay as strong as they were. And then they had a ton of information about their soft tissues, the hypothesized way that the tendons and the muscles were attached, and how their muscles could be attached based on the shapes of the bones and the scars, the markings on the bones. I thought that was really interesting. This is paleogeology. This is for, here is the stromatolite. I wanted to make sure I did this for Jerry because he is really into his stromatolites. And then fossilized soil. And I did this one for Greg Ritalik. He's into paleosoils. And so this was a paleosoil that he found. So I was thinking about you guys the entire time I was there. This one is for Bobby Bosnecker and Kent and Whalen. There is a whole huge area which is devoted to marine mammals, current marine mammals, so whales. So on the right-hand side of this slide, you can see a huge blue whale and then skeletons. And then around the outside, it talks about the evolution of the whales. So the picture on the far left side, this one was really cool. This was what they think the animal looked like before it went back to the ocean. This is what they think that the pre-whale looked like. It looks like a coyote, right? So it's a mammal, it's got fur, and it has legs that work. Isn't that interesting? That that blew me away. And then this is the how do we say it? Dactyl. You have a beautiful tooth of it, Bob. The Desmostylus, thank you. So a Desmostylus we had to see. And then the room. So that was really neat. And then the special collections area. This is on the top floor, and it's just a small hallway, and it's probably 12 displays of the most expensive, most precious items that they have at the museum. So they're from all over. And this here in the middle is the first edition of Darwin's Origin of the Species, which was beautiful. And then some of the fossils underneath his picture, you can see to the right is fossil teeth that he collected on his journey. The picture on the right this is the only picture of Mary Anning. This photograph in the lower left-hand side of that side is the only picture we think of Mary Anning that was ever taken. And it's only her backside. And she's out with a well-known geologist who's pointing up at some of the rocks around the Lyme Regis area. There's also a drawing of a plesiosaur that Mary Anning drew with squid ink from petrified squid. So she prepared the squid, and there was still enough ink in the sack that she would add water or alcohol, I don't know, and then she would draw with it. In the special collections area, there were also some other things that I found really special. William Smith's ammonites. So William Smith is the man that did the map that changed the world. So he used fossils at different levels to come up with the first geological map of England. So see, these are some of the ammonites that he collected. These are the first iguanodon teeth that were ever discovered, and that triggered the discovery of the dinosaurs. So these are the first dragon teeth that were ever found. And over here on the right side, they said this is the most expensive article that they have at the museum, and it is that bird dinosaur link that, and I don't know what Archaeopteryx, that is the fossil, the Archaeopteryx fossil. So it's precious. That museum was my favorite museum. I've been to the Field Museum and the Smithsonian's, and that museum was my favorite museum I've ever seen. So if you have the opportunity to go, and it's free, which is great. There's a $5 donation they ask for, and it's totally worth that. So I did lots of other stuff too, but so what I've brought up here, I have ammonite fossils, I have Teredo wood that I'm going to give to Debbie. I've got my crinoids and lots of ammonites, some oysters, that kind of stuff, and then some other books that I didn't mention if you'd like to see them. So that's it.